Hey everyone, and welcome to the FourVision podcast. I'm your host, Ivo, and every week I'm going to have a conversation that matters about HR. This week I have with me Dan Reeder. Welcome, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How about yourself? How's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Dan is an implementation consultant at FourVision, and today we're going to talk about the consultancy life and HR tech, learn from his expertise and the do's and don'ts of all this. So Dan, are you ready?
I think as ready as I'm going to be. Yeah, let's do this.
Fair enough. All right. As I do every time, just tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, a bit of your professional background. Go for it.
So you've already covered my name. I don't know if you can tell by the Game of Thrones accent, but I'm from the north of England. I've lived up here pretty much my whole life, really. I'm based around Manchester. I've been working with Dynamics for around about 10 years now in some shape or form. I started off, this is making me feel a lot older than I actually am. I started off working back in the days of like AX 4.0 and CRM 2011, and then migrated over to AX 2012 and worked with that for quite a few years before making the jump over to D365. Around the time when I started working with AX12, I started doing HR implementations with an end user, and then migrated over to working in consultancy for HR. I've sort of been around the block a little bit. I've worked with, obviously, finance and operations to some degree in a lot of supporting capacities. I worked in support with CRM, and then I finally settled on a specialty of HR about 5 years ago. And I've been working pretty much ever since. Yeah, I've done some bits and pieces with other D365 applications, so a little bit of customer service and a big chunk of Business Central. But yeah, HR is my bread and butter.
All right. Yeah. And did HR happen to you, or like you sort of picked the data and software as like a studies, and then HR came naturally, or how did that went?
So I was working as a bit of a general IT support consultant when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And then migrated over to working as a business analyst. And again, that was working with the whole shebang of AX12, so everything from purchase ledger, sales ledger, finance. Mm-hmm. And the project came on our list to work with HR and add them into AX12. And I just I don't know what it was about it, it just... something about it clicked when I was kind of going through their requirements and gaps, and quite enjoyed working with them. I quite enjoyed the functionality. And it was coming from a very, very heavy IT background. When you go in to then work with HR, there's something that they do have in common within a business where it's two departments that don't really have a profit center that you can see normally. IT was always very much just ate money because it just had to spend all this money on licenses and bits and pieces, and no one ever really saw the outgoings as far as finance are concerned, because no one cares when everything works. They just things don't. And HR was kind of the same thing, because you sat there and you're thinking, well, there's loads of things that this department does, and there's loads of outputs that benefit the business or could benefit the business, and again, they're just sort of left on the sidelines. And yeah, I had a little bit of solidarity with them because of that, and then just their processes clicked really well, and it's just something that I find speaks to me quite well.
Okay, so it's sort of a feeling that it's an area that needs help, that needs a bit more humanity to it, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those departments where the business doesn't see the benefits that they offer, and things like D365 help give the business visibility of the profit benefits that a good HR solution has. There's so much that even your CEOs and your financial stakeholders and shareholders in a business won't realize that HR can do, won't realize that bringing HR to your table can improve your business exponentially with very, very little effort. And it's quite nice to get to help people shine a little bit. It's a good feeling. It's probably the nice feeling about being a consultant, really.
Cool. Why do you think is that? Why is it? I believe nowadays there's this common sense that people are a valuable asset and companies are investing more and more in people, but that not always translates into the systems that the people use, right? Yes. You want to care about the people, but like in a personal way, but not on the tools that they use every day to improve their work lives, right? Mm. Why do you think that happens?
Yeah. I think it goes back to the very, very old school way of thinking where people just viewed HR, and you can blame a lot of media representation of this. If you think back to any TV show, the HR person is always sort of, all they really care about is just holding people's personal data. There's no real benefit to them in a lot of instances, and that's the mindset most people have. Because, you could talk to me or you about manufacturing processes, and we wouldn't really know the ins and outs of that operation because you don't see them. It's things, some materials go into a building and a finished product comes out the other end, and HR is kind of similar in a way. You just get no visibility of the benefits of them holding good data against you and how you can access it. And it's so rare that you'll take on any project where employees actually have access to an employee self-service before you move to D365. So as an employee, you've got zero knowledge of what data your company's A, holding against you, and B, what you can do to improve yourself at that place. Employee retention's changed dramatically in the last 10 or 15 years. Unfortunately, the days of just having a job and getting a pay rise every year until you retire for doing the exact same job, it doesn't really exist anymore, unfortunately. So, people are looking to go into the business more, especially younger people, go in having a clear line of sight of what they want to accomplish while they're at that business. And then if they can't accomplish anything more, moving on. So at this point, you need to talk to HR because these are the people that can help out with that. They can control your data, they can manage your line managers, they can see how you're doing in the positional hierarchy, they can manage reviews, salary uplifts. There's so much data in the system that most businesses just completely overlook. Like a line manager will know what his employee is earning, but their line manager won't. There's no visibility across the organization about what people are earning, what ratio people are on. So the pay rises are just given ad nauseum. There's very, very little control in businesses for really how to improve the lives of your employees without something like a good HR solution like D365, because you've just got no visibility of it. Like if I want to move up a grade in a company, if your company's compensation structure has no gradings, how do you improve your employees? What do your employees strive towards? Like what can you gain?
Interesting. Do you think? Just a thought came across my mind. Do you think having a system like that for HR, for managing people information, actually exposes a bit more the company, to their own employees? And that can be detrimental to the business management or whatever that is. Do you think it can be something like that sometimes?
It's a give and take. You have to have that trust in your line managers, and you have to have the trust in the employees. Obviously, the employees never going to have visibility of the compensation plans for all the organisation. They're going to know what they earn, and their line manager's going to know what they earn and what the rest of their team earn. But having that data somewhere in the system, it just makes changes so much easier. Giving a line manager the ability to request a compensation increase for one of their employees. It's just about having trust in your organization. It's something that even outside of HR, I think businesses are having to kind of come to terms with now, especially in, I hate using this term, but that new way of working since COVID, people are going to have to trust people a lot more when they work remotely and just have the confidence in their line managers and their heads of departments to make these decisions and manage their budgets way better than they did before. And I think as long as you've given people that trust, it's then up to them to either prove you're right or prove you're wrong.
All right. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Just a curious way of thinking about things, and it's the first time we actually discuss it like that. But it's very interesting. So you've been a consultant for some time. You've seen a lot of things, I guess, a lot of examples of must do's or must don'ts. So from your experience, like what is like to be a consultant in HR? What do you think it's a must have for someone that is a consultant?
I don't know. I think every consultant will probably give you a different answer to this.
For sure.
Whatever answer you get is always going to be horrendously biased. Obviously, like a baseline knowledge of the product is always number one. That's always beneficial. And my personal sort of best trait you could have is just be personable. If you've got a good bedside manner, if you've got good interpersonal skills, because at the end of the day, and you see it all the time where people that are very, very, very technical and horrendously knowledgeable go into a client, especially with departments like HR. A lot of these guys have never been exposed to technical business process people or anything in the past.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got like a finance department, they are almost expecting someone to come in and start spouting techno babble, and they're expecting they'll know what you're talking about, and that's all fine. A lot of the times with these bigger projects, especially if it's a wider finance and operations project, the HR department might potentially be a bit worried because it's always that kind of feeling that someone's coming in to like tell you how to do your job, and I get it, like, I'm sure we've all been there when you're at an end user and someone like a consultant comes in and rocks up in a pinstripe suit or something and is saying, okay, tell me how you do your job, and you're immediately on the back foot because you're like, I'm going to get in trouble if I say something wrong with this guy. So I think if you can just putting people at ease is always like the first thing to do. And I think just have a good bedside manner. If you're a good people person, you can do consulting. I'm not going to ever stand up and say that I'm the most knowledgeable person in Microsoft HR partners. I'm fortunately not. I'd love to be, but I think I'm very personable. I think it's something that clients like, and I think people will forgive if you don't know every single thing about the product, because it's very, very difficult to know every single area of something, especially when you look at outside of D365 for HR and how HR links in with finance and ops and the finance side of things. People will forgive you if you can say, okay, I'm going to go away and I'll get that answer for you. People like it, they want to deal with someone that you want to give them a consultant that they feel like they can open up to. They feel like they can tell them all of their processes. Because at the end of the day, it only helps the project if they tell you the maximum amount of information.
Yeah.
Just makes everything roll smoother. And part of that is just making people feel comfortable. Yeah. So.
I think that's a very important point, more than I think what you mentioned earlier, like what the finance, let's say a finance-minded audience expects is different than an HR-minded audience expects, right? So you should fit your discourse, let's say, or your people skills for purpose, right? You're probably going to be a bit more technical for IT, for financial people than you are for HR, and that's a very, very interesting point. Absolutely. So you must have found challenges before when implementing in a lot of a lot of companies? Do you have common challenges that you feel are, maybe change management, I guess, change the idea, getting some people to change the way they do their job is probably the hardest thing, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, getting people to agree to new processes or changes to process is always a difficult thing to do, especially when somebody's been doing that job for a long time. It's just a case of guiding them to the new way of thinking. So if there's obviously a big gap in a process, it's just, and again, it comes back to people skills and the way that you kind of talk to them about their processes. If you go in and just go with a very, very technical sense, what you're doing is wrong, and this is why, they're immediately just going to, okay, I hate this person and I'm just going to make his life a living hell for the next 6 to 8 months. Whereas if you can kind of give them alternatives and walk them through their processes better, that's always a big win for any project. But yeah, it depends really. I mean, one big blocker is always sort of introducing HR to the wider business. It's like I was saying earlier. Especially when you're integrating HR with finance and ops, all of a sudden you've got your HR department that are being sat in front of finance saying, okay, we're going to control people's financial dimensions, and that's going to be derivative to your workflow in finance, and our financial dimensions are going to control your financial dimensions from now on. Finance are normally immediately like, no, it doesn't. No, we control it all. It's it's us, and you will go back downstairs where you belong. So that's always like a big blocker, because you're almost at the front. You've almost initiated you feel like you've initiated like a company-wide battle at some point in time, where people are all of a sudden having to deal with another department that they didn't have to think about before. But it's always one of those challenges that it rides itself out eventually, and normally people are pretty agreeable in the end. And as long as you can make people see the benefits in the changes, it's never too much of a challenge.
Did you ever have a case where actually you were like midway through it and you had the finance department say, no, we can't deal with this, or yeah.
I don't know if you know this or not, but like English people are stubborn, mate. It's like the term "cut your nose off despite your face" was invented because of the English,
Wow.
It can do, but again, it goes off like sort of respect for the department. So if you're a fighter, and I'm sure at the time I didn't think about it like this, but I guess if you're the head of a finance department and you're obviously aware of HR, but you don't know the benefits of that department, you don't know what their ingoings and outgoings are, and all you think is, okay, they just store people's personal data. If you've got no knowledge of the sort of the profit center benefits of that department, it's completely understandable for you to be sort of defensive about them having potentially an impact in the data life cycle of your employee or your business. It's all problems. They're easily worked out. Problems with people are fine. You can deal with those. It's problems with processes are always more difficult.
Do you think, from what you're saying, it seems sometimes, or a lot of times, departments like HR, we need a new tool, or IT needs to integrate a new tool to HR or something. And it seems like a lot of times the departments don't talk to each other. They arrive to the table, they arrive to the phase, to an implementation stage, and to get the requirements that they need, and they are not fully aware of the implications that the systems can actually have for other departments, like the example you said with finance and operations. That happens a lot.
Oh God, yeah. It's it depends on different businesses, but I feel like a lot of the time since sort of the recession kicked off 15 years ago, and a lot of departments started to silo information, Because if they squirrel it away, that it's there. Okay, well, we can use this to save us. If the business ever starts looking to cut people, we've got all this data here, and we can use that as our advantage. Most of the time, it's not done in a negative light. I think people just get busy. It's very, very easy if you've got a busy department. You just get tunnel vision. Like I'm sure we both have it in our lives. When you've got so much going on, you do just get tunnel vision. You don't think about. You don't see the wood through the trees, Like my big example was I had years ago, like a HR implementation, and their IT department. So the HR department were kind of onboarding employees, inputting all their personal details, name. They were typing out the kind of the work email address, work phone numbers. They were all assigned to them, and then that was sent back to the line manager of the employee. They then had to type up a different form and log it with IT, who would then add them to the Active Directory and set up their email address and access to different platforms. And you're like, this could do all of this for it and like automate pretty much all of it, So, and it's when you've got somebody that's having to waste a day a week or 3 hours a day creating new employees and finding out when people are terminated, and line manager having to type up these new starter forms, and that's when you get issues within the wider business where it's a case of, I can't be bothered typing up another one of these new starter forms. I'll just get people to share a login. And that's when you end up with bigger issues. So it's stuff like that. It does have a knock-on effect. And even you think, okay, it's just a minor thing, but I get it. If you're a line manager of an office somewhere in the middle of nowhere, do you have hours a day to be typing up multiple new starter requests and retyping the same information? Because that's when you get data inconsistencies between the two, and all that stuff. It's like it just sometimes takes a step back or someone external to come in and say, listen, you could do this, and it will save you so much time.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Yeah, I think it's a good segue to the next, to the question that I had next, which is regarding HR tech in general. You already gave some great examples of how it can help you, how it can help HR professionals and IT and even finance. But in broad terms, what would you consider to be like the importance of HR tech?
I mean, immediately just going back to that last example, just having HR be the starting point for employees, actually the actual core starting point, rather than HR and IT and God knows who else all have different paths. Have it all at HR, have that be the master, and use HR tech to integrate to the Azure AD to create an account there and create an email address, and storing bits of information on the job to control what level of access they'll need to different things. And then your IT department can use that information to build up their different access for different things and grant licenses. Like that alone is like a massive win. And D365, Office 365, is making that a lot easier nowadays, especially with more and more applications locked in for the Office sort of licensing structure. Yeah, you'd see it's so much easier to just use your domain login for everything. You don't have to have 20 different logins for 20 different applications.
Indeed.
You've got a different username for each one, and because none of the systems talk to each other. So like that's been, and you still get people that are blown away by that alone, just having to say, listen, you don't have to remember a different password anymore. It's just the one for everything. You would think people don't forget those passwords if they've just got one, but yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, it's a big win. And it just like stuff like that gives, and again, there's obviously trust attached to this, but giving line managers more ability to put in termination requests or new position requests for their team and workflow that to their line managers and HR for approval just cuts down a lot of the busy work and a lot of the paperwork that HR have to deal with, as long as they've got the trust in the system that the information that is being supplied is good and they can check it all and there's an audit trail to who's requested it and who's approved it. It's fantastic. it streamlines the operation so much. It's even though they just seem like tiny things, it's marginal gains do add up, you know.
Indeed, that's a great point as well. Now, going back to the root cause of, they all seem very, very good reasons for people to shift and to invest in HR tech. So why is it not happening? Why don't we see like a big trend, or we still see a lot of people, a lot of companies using the way they always knew, like spreadsheets and all that. So I think it's changing. We see that in our own business, but why do you think is that people don't want to take a step further, and or they just want to keep working as they always knew how to do it?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's a mixture of all the things we talked about. Really, it's the anxiety of moving forward. It's the great unknown of sort of exposing yourself as a department to the business. You're almost putting yourself on a bit of a pedestal, really, and some people don't like that. Historically, and we might accidentally really annoy most of our listener base by saying this, but there always used to be that sort of stereotype of HR just being, that one little old lady that just kind of input people's addresses on spreadsheets all day and else. And again, like, people don't understand it's way more than that. It's so much more than just that. So from like a wider business perspective, if you've got to invest like 80 grand in a HR solution and you don't know what HR does and you don't know what the benefits are of having that system, I mean, if I didn't have that knowledge, I wouldn't want to spend that money. So it's just about making sure that really people are more aware of what's going on in the business. If you take the time and really kind of sit down and think, okay, what is HR? What do they do? It doesn't take a genius to sort of very quickly realize the benefits of having a streamlined HR department. I think that one of the good things about such a big upturn last year during the pandemic, like, it just got crazy. I mean, like, you'll know as well, it got crazy busy in our field. And I think people did come to that realization. The sort of the downtime and things getting quiet, it gave people that respite to almost stick their head out the sand and go, right, okay, we've got this downtime, and we've now got this big remote working push. So they're all immediately turning around to HR and going, what do we do about all these home workers? And this is the thing. It's like, well, we can't run it on spreadsheets anymore because we don't know where everyone, So yeah, there's that big, it's almost a bit of a forceful push for some of them. And I am sympathetic to that, because obviously it's always nice to make the choice to improve your solutions. But if you're being dragged kicking and screaming because of a global pandemic, it's not ideal. But yeah, I think that's been like a big push. And I feel like most businesses, the management is behind HR. It doesn't feel like anyone's fighting with the wider business. Especially on my projects at the moment, everyone seems to be fairly united in the front to move forward and streamline operations where we can, which is good. And I think in the long run, it's going to be good.
Absolutely. One thing that we didn't talk before about your background, or what I understood, is that you always worked with Microsoft applications, or did you play around with other applications?
So I'd worked with a lot of random bespoke ones back in my old school sort of, when I was beginning in IT. It was literally just a be all and end all of everything. So everything from email setup to creating accounts and using some like random bespoke system and some bits and pieces. But I kind of preferred working with AX at the time, just because it made a little bit more sense. The other systems using were all, and again, I'm showing my age here really bad, but they were all sort of command-based systems. It was very like, I don't like this. If you don't use a mouse to control your system, it's not a good thing. But yeah, so then I started working with AX, and then did some work with CRM, did a little bit of work in that field, and then sort of wanted to go back to AX again. So I started specialising in AX as a business analyst, and I've just kind of been doing that ever since, really.
All right. No, I was asking because, I was about to ask you regarding Microsoft itself. You already shared some of the, the main advantages that they have. The fact that they have so many applications that integrate seamless together. So you have one login to use loads of applications that can do different things for you, not only in HR, but finance, operations, and all that. Would you say that that's the main advantage, working with Microsoft, or do you see other?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing I always thought about when I was younger and probably a lot more immature than I am now, it's Microsoft. Like, you can get to say, oh, we have a Microsoft solution at our business. It's everyone knows who Microsoft is. It's used by like 99% of the computers on the planet. It is the most successful computer platform ever. It's a massive kind of powerhouse of a machine that you have at your fingertips. So, why would you want that? Why would you, if you're going to get a system, why don't you get a system that's designed by the most successful computer kind of software company in history? They're obviously doing something right.
I guess. I think that's a great question to ask yourself. Why would you not want that, right? And so with so much expertise as well, and a legacy that you can't really compare it to a lot of companies, actually.
Oh no, and you get consultants like us as well, so we can come and you don't get people like us with other kind of brands. It's so specific, aren't we?
All right. That's a fair one. That's talking about a bit the future of HR. Obviously, you worked with these systems for a long time. You've seen new trends, new functionalities coming up. So, looking at the future, do you see any trends on HR technology? What are you most excited about, if any?
I think there's going to be, a lot of companies have probably already adopted this already by this point, but those that haven't are really going to have a push into giving more power through like employee self-service and line manager self-service. Mm-hmm. Things like annual reviews, that's going to have to be more managed by the employee and the line manager themselves rather than rolled out and pushed onto people by HR. They're just going to have a lot more trust in the user base to do these things themselves, because they just don't have the visibility that they do anymore. People are working remotely. And I think for a lot of companies, it's not going to be completely remote forever, but certainly a good percentage of time working remotely. People need to. I think there's going to be a big upturn in the amount of accessibility that businesses allow their employees to have through employee self-service. Definitely, I think that's going to be the big one in the next 12 months. Because that's really a knock-on effect to everything, because you can't really, if you've got like a very, very good kind of compensation matrix in place, what good is that if you're not going to allow your line managers to utilize it? What's the point in being able to report on ratios and where people sit in hierarchy if you can't give that information to your line managers, if they don't have the ability to request position changes and new positions for their team? So I think that's going to be like a big push in the next 12 months.
That's a very interesting take. You seem like a very practical guy, because I was expecting that you would talk, about mixed reality and, those kind of automation or AI or something like that. And you're just making sense for people, like what we need right now for people, and that you think is going to come in the next 12 months. So I appreciate that.
I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. I always kind of think on the sort of the base client level rather than but I think that's just generally in my kind of background in the functional side of things. So I don't know whether it's a good answer or a bad answer.
No, it's any answer is a good answer. I think it's very practical. I think people actually can understand and relate to that. I can, as an employee, for example. I'm not an HR expert or not even close, but But I feel exactly what you're saying. I think it is going to be important that employees have a bit more power because they're working remotely. This is changing right now, and it's going to keep evolving and changing in the next 12 months. So I think it's a very practical answer.
Yeah. You need to know where your employees are. You need to know what they're doing, and HR holds that information. So the more reporting information you've got that you can give to the business, the better. And obviously you've got resources like Power BI, and those can all be integrated into the platform really well. So all that data is, if you're not utilizing the data that you've got, why not at this point? Why don't you know where your employees are? That will be the big question I think most people are going to be asking HR departments in the next sort of 12 months. Who's asking what on where and for who? And as an employee, who do I work for and where are they? So yeah, stuff like that.
Very practical answer. I really enjoy that. Sort of a last challenge, let's say. If you have anything, as a consultant, at the height of your expertise, I just need to mention that for people listening that didn't see the snippets or the video on LinkedIn, actually, Dan doesn't look as old as he might give,
I'm from the north of England, mate. My people do not have a long lifespan. It's not good.
Well, Dan is looking very healthy, so you guys listening, don't worry about that. Okay, so the last challenge is, if you had one thing to say about to HR recruiters or to HR professionals anywhere from your expertise, what would it be?
Don't do drugs.
Okay, that's that's sensible. That's sensible.
I don't know. I mean, I guess just have trust in your kind of employees. Trust the processes. It's always a good thing to do. People like to feel like they're trusted as well. So if you're giving your employees that trust and that power, with the premise of please don't let us down, people like to have power over their own data. People want to know that they've got, they're not just working a dead-end job. If you can give them anything that says, listen, you're working towards something, or you're part of this team, or, this is your line manager, you've got a clear line of sight. If you want to arrange a one-to-one, you can. Even like daft little features like employee feedback, you can give anyone in your business feedback. That's a really good feature. You can really build up your own sort of certifications in the system, and you should let people do that. You should let people take the time to build up their own goals and build up their own performance journals and note things that they're doing and things that they want to do. Because at the end of the day, it only benefits your business.
Absolutely.
That's all it's going to do. That's the end of the day. You might get the odd person put in like a shirtless selfie as their employee profile picture, but it's a risk that you have to take, unfortunately. But for every one hooligan that does that, you're going to have 100 that you've got a load of data on. So if you ever need someone in your organization that's a plumber and can speak French, if people have filled in a load of language certifications and noted any plumbing qualifications they have, you've got that data at your fingertips. It's a good thing to trust your employees with this kind of thing.
Perfect way to end this up.
Good.
Thank you, Dan. This was great. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Cool. I bet I'm not invited on again, I'm sure.
No, probably you will. Who knows, as long as it keeps helping with your life expectancy, let's say, since you have a shorter one, maybe we need to have you more often. I don't know.
Yeah, see how I'm getting on.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.